I finally finished the Trails in the Sky trilogy the other day, after 3 years. That's right, 3 years. So it took me a media of one game per year to finish it because I always take my sweet time with JRPGs. So this was no exception. My story with the entire franchise of The Legend of Heroes, or Kiseki as it's known in Japan, it's messy to say the least, since I played Trails in the Sky 1 back in 2015 when I got it in a Steam sale, but I ended up dropping it because I thought it was really boring, and I don't blame anyone or even myself for dropping it because those first 10 hours are the slowest introduction to any video game I ever played in my entire life, and I have played a ton of JRPGs. After dropping it, I decided to never continue playing it because I didn't even like it very much. So, in 2016, Trails of Cold Steel 1 was on sale on PS3 of all places, and I decided to give it a go since it looked different from Trails in the Sky. I ended up really loving that game, clocking up to 100 hours. May I remind you, this game on PS3 didn't have turbo mode, but back in the day I didn't know better since I was a newbie with this franchise. But I really didn't care that much since I enjoyed my time with it. After that, I played Trails of Cold Steel 2, which, I'll be honest with you, I didn't like that much, but I won't bore you with the details as for why. Maybe I will make a video about the Cold Steel, the Trilogy, in the future, who knows. This one took me over 4 entire years to push through. It's one of those cases where another game in the series almost made me drop it entirely, but the only reason why I didn't was because I played the demo of Trails of Cold Steel 3 before I even finished the second game, because I was curious how it ran on a Nintendo Switch, and I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun with that demo because it reminded me of Trails of Cold Steel 1, but better. So in the end, I decided to push on with Trails of Cold Steel 2 and finish it, post-game dungeon and all. After that, I bought the Switch version of 3 and played it for around 10 hours. And then, when I was talking about the game with a friend who also plays this series, he asked me, "Did you play the games before Cold Steel?" And I say, "No, because I didn't like it very much." "Why?" He then activated Falcon Fanboy mode and said to me, "No, stop playing Trails of Cold Steel 3 right now. You will not enjoy it as much if you don't finish the games before Cold Steel." I was confused at first, since I didn't play them, but I enjoyed the first Cold Steel game and I enjoyed the second one enough to push through the boring parts. Why should I go back to a game I didn't like in the first place? He said that characters from the 2 previous arcs were going to appear in Trails of Cold Steel 3, and if I didn't understand where they were coming from, I would not enjoy the game as much. So, in the end, I decided to pick up Trails in the Sky again, after not playing it for around 6 years, I think. My old save was still there, and since I still remembered a little bit of the start, something about a mine and something about a farmer family. Pretty boring moments, if you ask my old me. But what about now? What do I think about them now that I've finished an entire trilogy of games I neglected at first? They are pretty good, actually. And I will ever say Trails in the Sky 1 and 2 are combined are probably one of the best JRPG experiences I had in my entire life. The Trails series is a series of RPGs with a big focus on story. Just to give you an example, the entire script of Trails in the Sky second chapter is bigger than the entire Lord of the Rings novels. The story revolves around Stell Bright and Joshua Bright, two young siblings unrelated by blood who want to follow the steps of their father, Cassius Bright, in becoming bracers. What is a bracer, you ask? Well, the Bracer Guild is a non-governmental organization that takes all kinds of odd jobs and requests, from rescuing a cat to finding a lost item or even monster extermination. But don't confuse them with the police. There are actual police and military separated from bracers, which are more of a private organization that extends all over the continent of Zemuria. Trails in the Sky specifically takes place in just one country of said continent, a country of the name of Liberal. Stell and Joshua will travel all over Liberal to increase their bracer rank and become senior bracers. On their way, they will find all kinds of people and situations they have to deal with and overcome, leading to some big moments, and to the second game called SC, which means second chapter. So, in the end, all of that boring part at the beginning was actually just a slow burn of getting acquainted with the characters and the world and all of its concepts. Was it worth it to push through all that? Definitely. Did you know FC and SC were actually going to be just a single game? But the scope of the game was so big they had to trim it down to 2 games. Well, 3 games? Yeah, that third game is something completely different from the other 2, but completely related at the same time. Let's say FC and SC are actually just a single game. Well, the third will actually be the post-game of that single game. So we can just assume the 3 of them were originally planned as a single game but have to split in 3 parts. And that's the way they will handle the entire series from now on. One slow first game, which introduces all the new characters, lore, and elements, then BAM! Hit you with a huge cliffhanger at the end of the first game, and after that, making the second game a direct continuation of that. They're pretty smart actually, because that cliffhanger at the end of Cold Steel 1 is what made me want to play the second game, same with Sky 1 and 2. Also, the series is constantly referred to as the One Piece of video games, but I won't quite agree with that statement actually. As I said, my first game that officially introduced me to this series was actually the 6th game in the series, which was the first game in its respective arc. But in One Piece, you cannot just jump straight into Thriller Bark or the time skip, because it still uses the same crew from the beginning of the series. Meanwhile, Kiseki uses new protagonists in each new arc, which uses the protagonists of other arcs as secondary characters, making each arc very self-contained games. And if you are not very picky about it, you just can watch a video on YouTube explaining to you what happened in the past games. Of course, it won't hit the same notes on you like if you actually played those games. And these games hit you hard on the feelings, let me tell you. Of course, what they mean is that the scope of the world and lore is just as big as One Piece. For example, the 8th game in the series uses a lot of lore and characters from the first and second arc of the series, but I will say that even if you haven't played past games, you're going to enjoy the games nonetheless. Of course, having in mind that you will not nerd as hard when a character from past arcs appears. Having said that, let's talk a little about the gameplay. When you hit an enemy on the map, you will be transported to another screen to battle like any other classic turn-based JRPG. In this battlefield, you move in tiles, like if you were playing some tactics game like Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy Tactics. Your characters have a movement range and they also are very dependent on the speed stat to attack often. They have two types of skills: the physical ones called crafts, and the magical ones called arts, which you can equip as something known as quartz, which are very reminiscent of materia from Final Fantasy VII. Craft and arts use different types of resources to craft, using CP, and arts using EP. EP is your standard mana that depletes when using arts. You can only recover EP using items or rest stations. Meanwhile, CP is only recovered when using a normal attack, being hit by an enemy or with certain items later in the games, and sleeping on ints too. When CP reaches 100%, you can unleash a special ultimate attack called S-Craft. If you manage to get 2000 of CP, your S-Craft potency increases a lot. Enemies and allies' turns will shown on a timeline on the side of the screen, but you can cheat on when to attack using an S-Craft whenever you want if you have 100 CP or more, making it a very common strategy to accumulate CP before a boss fight and unleash all of your 4 characters' S-Crafts before the battle even begins. As the series progresses, the battle systems become even more exploitable, which in my opinion makes them really fun and not that complicated. But remember, these are 2003 and onwards games. They can feel pretty archaic at times, even in the updated 2016 PS Vita versions, released only in Japan. You can play those versions in English via a patch if you have a modded PS Vita. Also, these versions are completely voiced. And when I say completely, I mean it. Even the more inconsequential NPC gets voiced. And if you didn't know, you can mod the Steam version to have these voices too. My enjoyment of the first game that I dropped back in the day increased immensely by just adding voices to my game. These games are not perfect by any means, but they have a lot of heart, which you can say for every Falcon game really. The third game especially was not really that great in my opinion, but still is a must play because it had great moments and very interesting setups for future arcs. You can say the third is like the post-game dungeon of the trilogy, and if you treat it as such, you will enjoy it more. I hope you are convinced to play the games now, because they are really good actually. They're not masterpieces in my opinion, but I really like the series so far, and I will keep pushing through the series. I don't even think I will get bored, to be honest. And that was my review of The Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky Trilogy, completely spoiler-free. So go ahead and enjoy them. Please give a like and subscribe for more JRPG and Japanese games content. Until next time, bye!